I'm Tim Ventura from AmericanAntigravity.com, and I'm speaking today with Igor Witkowski, defense journalist and author of several books, including The Truth About the Wunderwaffe, Hitler's Plan to Transform the World, Codename Regentrophen, and Hitler's Underground Kingdom. Well, Igor, thank you very much for joining us. Now, you've written a number of books on German secret weapons of World War II, but your most well-known work comes from your investigation into the Nazi Bell device, which was described in Nick Cook's The Hunt for Zero Point. Can you start out by telling me how you met Nick Cook and how long you've known each other?
It's actually Nick has met me. He has found me. Through his contacts as the consultant for the Jane's Defense Weekly, he has found me, and he expressed interest in this area that basically he's doing the same what I do, only that I'm dealing rather with the pure history. With the research projects from the Second World War. I have written a lot of books about it, and because I have my contacts and some archival experience, I have managed to arrive to a lot of previously unknown materials about this. And one of these was the documentation of an German research project, which was codenamed. There were actually two code names referring to this project. One was the Chronos, which is, I guess, intelligible, and the other is Laternenträger, which means a kind of a person who was lighting up gas lamps on the streets in the bygone days. I have to admit that working on the explanation of this project was the greatest challenge that I have ever encountered, because of the complexity of this issue, because it was a scientific challenge as well, and for many reasons.
Absolutely. Well, can you tell me how you first learned about the Nazi Bell? And I guess you had just mentioned two code names, but one of those was Project Kronos.
Both code names refer to the same project, only that one was pertaining rather to purely physical aspects. Having something in common with physics, and subordinate to a physicist. And the other code name referred to the biological or medical side effects that were associated with this, because one of the main aims of the research was to limit these effects, because it was very harmful generally. How I found out about it, I was contacted by a person who was analyzing it for many years in the previous decades, and because I have written a lot of books about the German research from the time of the war, he just asked me if it's familiar in any way to me. It wasn't, obviously. I didn't hear about it before, but because my partner in these conversations appeared to be a very serious person, well informed. It was something that I couldn't reject, and eventually I started to work on this and gather materials or any confirmations from independent sources. And after some 5 or 6 years, I finally managed to assemble a kind of jigsaw puzzle, if you like, some kind of a comprehensive picture.
Sure. Well, what did that picture show you? What actually was the Nazi Bell device?
It's a very complex problem, but one, I have to emphasize that not in one place it has been mentioned that it was a kind of weapon, not. And generally it was some purely research device, not something ready to be used on combat, for example. And it seems for me, I have no literal confirmation of this, but my impression is that it was just a part of something greater, of which we don't know. And from the descriptions, from the terms, scientific terms used by the Germans, and from the analysis basing on the opinions of numerous contemporary modern scientists, it follows from this that it certainly had something in common with the relativistic physics. Only that it was a little bit different approach that was resulting from the Einstein's theory, for example, because it relied on the connection between the atomic forces and gravity. Namely, for example, on the atomic spin. There is a lot of notions in the modern physics, even in this one basing on the Einstein's theory. For example, that's just one of the clues. These notions refer to the connection between atomic spin, which generally is the rotation, spinning of the atomic nuclei, and the generation of gravity. That's the one notion. The other one is that another phenomenon which is connected with this is the rotation of the electromagnetic fields and the fields in general, and it also should influence gravity. And another one fact on which they based is that achieving some kind of separation of such a fields in some way. It's not easy, but it's generally possible.
Sure.
It could also mean some kind of screening of gravity. That's how it looks like. So generally, it's very interesting. It is possible to connect it with the to find some reference to the modern research works and the modern analysis, to the modern physics in general. But their approach was slightly different that what the modern scientists are doing now. We're doing until recent times, because quite recently there are some signs suggesting that the general science is returning to this promising notion or direction. But that's another story.
A lot of this comes back to Walther Gerlock, doesn't it? You've mentioned him as being connected to the Bell Project.
Yes, it has been confirmed that he was one of the best German scientists from the time of the war, and outstanding figure generally. He was the chief of the Scientific Research Council, but amazingly, very few is known about or was known about his scientific activity, and this project would explain this such a blank spot. Yes, he was his main achievement or merit was that he carried out in the 1920s, an experiment which is called Stern writing S-T-E-R-N, Stern-Gerlach experiment, which proved generally the quantization of the time-space, and that's something weird. And generally, all the story consists of such a weird fact, because how it is possible that that it has been overlooked after the war, that such a interesting direction wasn't continued, if I may say so.
Sure.
Yes, he was the physical leader of this project, but there were many persons which contributed some kind of knowledge to this, and one of the most important was, in my view, he was a doctor, Kurt Debus. It's you some kind of sample of the complexity of the whole issue. It consists of so many elements, and it's such a state of the art that it just wouldn't be possible to do it in a shorter time.
Absolutely. Well, another key figure appears to be SS General Hans Calmler, and both you and Nick Cook have apparently written about him being more of kind of a government liaison or kind of a military project leader for the physics project.
Not exactly. I wouldn't say that that Calmler was important person in this project in particular, because not once he was mentioned in the sources on which I based, and Calmler was generally responsible for most technologically advanced military project or armament projects, and but as he was responsible for industrial undertakings, I would rather say. But in this case, other names appear which are no less interesting. And one of the crucial persons from the, if you are thinking about the military superiors, was the chief of the so-called Research and Development Group at the Armament Office of the Waffen-SS. He was SS Brigadeführer, which was general, the rank of general, Heinrich Gertner, which is Gartner, along with another SS general, whose name was Emil Mazov. They were really responsible for the most secret, the most promising, the most interesting research and development activities related to the SS, and not Calmler, who was generally not responsible for research and development as such. And as I mentioned about the weird facts and that something has been overlooked at the door, that's another example, because these two persons, I mean Mazov and Gertner, were very interesting, responsible for the most state-of-the-art armament projects, and it is really very hard to find any information about them. Their role and anything relating to them is completely unknown. That's just the proof that what the Germans managed to develop was a kind of then equivalent of the modern black projects or black world or something like that, because whole entire segments of this jigsaw puzzle are missing or were missing. I would rather say that they were missing, or rather were ignored.
On your website, you have some gorgeous, these are just absolutely wonderful photos of the Wenceslas mine. And your website URL is igorwitkowski.com. It's IGORWITKOWSKI.com, just for the audience. And I was wondering if you could describe the test chamber at Wenceslas mine for us.
The device, the bell, which was a kind of accelerator for heavy ions, which accelerated mercury plasma and created a very special kind of vortices. It influenced the environment or the surroundings very badly. It emitted some kind of energy, which in part may be attributed to the known effects of ionizing radiation and gamma radiation, neutrons and such things, but not entirely. The effects were too strange and too strong to explain them in a conventional way. It generally not only killed all the organisms in the immediate vicinity, but also changed their structure. They were changing, such as plants, for example, into a kind of, after several days, into a kind, first and foremost, then they paled or became white or gray or light gray. And then after a couple of days or several hours, they were changing into a kind of resembling a rancid fat, for example. And very complex, very strange changes were observed in the case of animals, in the tissues and so on, as well as human. And every experiment was carried out in a special chamber, mostly underground, in most cases underground, which after 2 or 3 tests were collapsed, blown up because it was in a rock. And apparently they were very much afraid of this harmful effects because it has they killed a lot of scientists, not mentioning the auxiliary personnel.
Yes, yes.
But eventually they managed to reduce greatly these side effects. For example, the number of damaged samples has been reduced from about, let's say, 10-20% to about 1% within a couple of weeks. So they apparently found a kind of a key to these side effects.
Sure, sure. Well, now, in terms of the concrete test platform, you've suggested that that may be a restraint for a high-output propulsion device. What kind of thrust do you believe the Bell may have produced, and how large of a craft may have it been able to lift?
It's impossible at the present stage of science to calculate such an effect because in their approach, the gravity was a kind of a shadow effect of the atomic interactions, and the present theory, Einstein's theory, does not enable to connect gravity with the quantum physics, with quantum electrodynamics. So we may make a kind of estimation, but we cannot calculate anything. It's connected with such a strange and unpredictable physical phenomena that it's so complex. It's still such a scientific challenge that it's impossible.
Absolutely. Well,
probably they would be able to achieve to reduce or to achieve deformation of the time-space continuum to a significant degree, but I'm not able to say anymore. And I believe that very few people would be able.
Sure. There are a group of scientists, John Daring being one of them, in California, who believe that Einstein's unified field theory may produce some of the connections that you've described. It was a never completed theory, but the idea is that it was complete enough for engineering level work to connect quantum effects and gravity, among other things. So that
perhaps I'm not in a position to make a judgment, but anyway, there were many in the interwar period. After the First World War, there were many derivatives of the Einstein's theory, such as Cartan's theory. Cartan was a French scientist, or Austrians, Lense and Thirring were working on this, which were trying to in some way to connect the Einstein's theory with such notions that the Germans were interested in, and it's generally accepted in physics, but it's less known because these are sort of derivatives of the Einstein's theory. Yes.
Absolutely. Well, do you believe that torsion fields played a role in this project? And would these be similar to the torsion tensor that Albert Einstein proposed?
Yes, it's something about this. Yes, definitely. Only that the problem is that Einstein was able to predict that such a phenomenon should exist, and there is no doubt that such a connections exist. But because he departed from the quantum world, generally, speaking in physical language, because he departed from the quantum world, he wasn't able to proceed any further. To exploit such a phenomenon. But generally, yes, it's about the one of the crucial elements in all this description is the torsion of the field. Yes.
Well, the suggestion has been, and again, from looking at the test platform, by rotating Mercury Plasma, which is an idea that's been proposed actually in modern science, a gentleman named Edgar Fouché was claiming
Mhm.
that the U.S. government had experimented with that. Well, actually, I should go back for just a sec. Was it a plasma or was it a mercury liquid?
Well, it was a plasma under high voltage. Yes.
Oh, okay. So it was actually
Spinning very fast and moving very fast ions. It. I'm not able to say what sort of, or what range of velocities they would be able to achieve, but it's generally it could be achieved in the range of kilometers per second. Yes.
absolutely. Well, it's interesting because Edgar Fouché had described a U.S. government experiment, which may or may not exist. It's more of a myth than a reality, but he described something called the TR3B, and it utilized a toroidal mercury vapor plasma generator. And
Hmm.
the belief was that it was able to reduce the effects of gravity by, I believe, 80%. It's interesting that the World War II device, the Nazi Bell, would use almost the same configuration, though.
I'm not able to in a position to to say whether it's the same approach. Uh, I'm not sure if it's if the story about referring to the TR3 is genuine. But I just don't know it very well. I heard about it, but I just don't know it very much.
Oh no, yeah,
Uh,
I no, it makes.
but
I'm in the same
but he,
position.
yes, but the problem is, or the nature of the problem is generally such that it is within our reach technologically to make something like that. Only that the problem is that you need to have some kind of theory uh, which may be used to just to construct such a device. And the problem is that there is no theory, but uh, when only it could be achieved, it would be possible to calculate all the strange things appearing, emerging from the border area between gravity and the quantum physics. When we would have such a theory, we would be able to do this technologically without major problems, I believe.
Sure. Well, to follow up a little bit, to actually Nick Cook left a number of leads hanging at the end of Zero Point. Do you know what happened to Hans Calmler after the project, after the war ended? Did he disappear
I,
or?
I don't know. Generally, he simply disappears. And uh, he was either killed in some accident, for instance, during an attempt to flee, or has been hidden by one of the superpowers because he wouldn't be able he was a great figure in a way. Uh, wouldn't be able to disappear just like that. If he survived the war, which is highly likely, he would have to be hidden by a superpower, by a state generally.
Sure.
And it is possible that he sold his secrets to the Americans and has been hidden out there. But uh, I'm just not able to say.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and he had committed a number of war crimes, hadn't he?
Yes, in the exploitation of the workforce of the slave laborers. I mean, of the inmates of the concentration camps. Just to mention a few.
Yeah, well, and one of the hopes would be that, despite the dark history of this project, maybe the learning that we can gather from it for the future may, in some way, help to begin offsetting some of the damage that was done by Kammler and the other SS and the Nazis. Well,
Yes.
do you know what happened to the Nazi Bell device itself? What?
Uh, it was evacuated generally to Norway, and it's there where the track disappears. Uh, there are some possibilities or some facts suggesting that it ended up in this or that or another country, but I'm still trying to verify it, and until I will not finish it, I will not be inclined to disclose it. Not because it's a secret, but I just wouldn't like to say anything of which I'm not absolutely sure.
Oh, absolutely. Well, we're almost out of time today, but I wanted to say thanks again for your time and this wonderful information. And I should say that the audience can learn more about your research through your website at igorwitkowski.com. And again, that's igorwitkowski.com. And your website also has instructions for people who want to purchase your books through Books International in the United Kingdom.
Actually, it's not distributed through Books International in the United Kingdom, but when somebody would like to buy it, probably he would be able to.
Oh, okay, yes. Absolutely. So would they be able to email you, do you think?
Yes, generally yes.
Okay, and the email that I have is contact@igorwitkowski.com. Well, thanks again for your time, and have a wonderful afternoon.
My pleasure. Thank you too.